Hello everybody, and thank you for choosing Adventurers Incorporated. I apologize for the poor sound quality of the mic, but I hope that you can still learn a thing or two from these instructional videos. Today we're going to learn how to start your very first fortress in the game, Dwarf Fortress. These videos are intended for beginners and other adventurers who perhaps have been playing for a little while, but would still like and or need some tips and tricks to help them get by. First things first, step number 1, get the program known as the Lazy Noob Pack. This program is extremely helpful to new players and experts alike, and I would highly recommend it. It isn't necessary per se, but it contains a variety of peripheral programs that you can run in tandem with the game that will really streamline your gameplay experience, particularly the larger your fortress becomes. This program is very easy to find and download. Open up your web browser and go to any search engine and type in Lazy Noob Pack Dwarf Fortress or any variant thereof, and it should be one of the first options that appears, you can see on my screen. Just follow the link to the website, LazyNoobPack.1. I believe you can also find this program in the forums for Bay 12 forums, but this is probably the easiest way. Now, there are several different versions depending on what OS or computer you have. There's a Windows, a Mac, and a Linux version available for download and installation. I personally have the Windows version. You may need one of these other ones, but all of which are as easy and as simple to use. Just click the link, download, follow the instructions for installation, and it shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Once it's downloaded and you open up the program, this will be the first screen that will appear. Now I'm going to run through a few of the tabs and options on these screens to kind of give you a little better idea of what all of this contains. Now several tabs at the top of the screen, which read Options, Graphics, Utilities, Advanced, and Dwarf Fortress Hack, which we're not really going to worry about right now. That'll be a little later on. We'll go through some of the options available in each of these tabs, and it's kind of a good setup for the game and the world you want to start. So under the Options tab, you have a section called Gameplay Options. Now this is things such as population cap, child cap, cave-ins, as you can see down through here. And these are things that can happen in the game or will directly affect your gameplay experience. You can mouse over each of these options and it will give you a brief description of what each of these tabs will do. Now, population cap is exactly how it sounds. It alters the maximum population in your fortress. And as you can see, setting this too low may disable certain gameplay features, but you don't really need to worry about that right now. Now, why would you use this option? Well, in-game, seasonally and yearly, you get migrants that come to your fortress. And sometimes you might not be ready for a new migrant wave, or you just want to keep your fortress population at where it's at. If you alter this number, you can keep that in line very easy. I use it for this reason all the time. Child cap is pretty obvious. It alters how many children can be in your fortress at one time, because your dwarves will have kids, or you might have kids that come in a migrant wave. You also have visitation cap. There are other civilizations that will visit your fortress later on, and this alters the number of them that can show up. This option here alters whether or not invaders will attack your fortress, and you definitely want to leave this to yes, and if not, then get out of here, because this is one of the funnest part of the game. Now, you can also alter the number of invading soldiers that will appear at one time, and the number of invading monsters that will appear at one time as well. You can also alter things such as cave-ins. Sometimes while digging, if you don't dig properly, it'll cave in, and although this can cause somewhat of a setback, it's just a fun option to have. If you turn it off, you're going to take away what I consider one to be a fun part of the game. Weather is whether or not you want weather to happen in your world, and I would recommend keeping that on as well. Now, artifacts we'll talk about a little more in depth later on in another video, but long story short, artifacts are items that are usually pretty powerful or valuable that your dwarves can create, and this turns whether or not they will do that on or off. I would leave that on. Temperature, now this is toggles extreme weather conditions such as freezing or extremely hot. If you're in deserts or something, I would leave that on as well. Now these last two options I'm going to talk about, entombing your pets and aquifers, as you can see on my screen, I have turned off. Now in the game, when your dwarves and or pets die, you don't necessarily have to, but it's a good idea to bury them and assign them a grave site and a tombstone. If you don't, their ghosts can come back and cause all sorts of shenanigans in your fortress. Now, there's a difference between animals and pets in the game. Animals you can use as like livestock to get food from, but sometimes your dwarves will adopt a pet, such as a dog, and it'll follow them around and be their personal pet. This is what this option refers to. Now, if you have it on, you have to treat them as if a dwarf had died and bury that pet and create a tombstone for it, or else some negative consequences can happen. I don't like dealing with it. You might like doing it if you're an animal lover, you know, cool beans, good for you, but I just ain't about that life, so I keep it off. It's less hassle for me. And our next option, aquifers. Some other players might judge me for this, but I just honestly do not like dealing with it. In the game, there are different layers called Z levels, which we'll discuss more in depth a little later on. But as you dig, it refers to how deep underground you're digging and how far above ground you climb, and each one is called a Z layer. Now, once you dig so deep, you run into what's called aquifers, and this is an entire Z layer filled with water. Now, it does add a new dimension to the game. Some people like the challenge because there's ways you have to like pump the water out or work around it. I just honestly don't like dealing with it, and it's more of a hassle for me. Some might disagree, but for now, especially for new players, I would recommend turning this option off. That way no aquifers will appear in your generated world. Let's go on to the next tab, Graphics. Now this chooses the different tile sets that the game will appear in. Of course, if you're at all familiar with Dwarf Fortress, it's not known for its amazing graphics, but some of these will make your experience quite enjoyable. I personally enjoy the Phobos graphics pack. This is the one I'll be using in this tutorial video, and you'll get a better look at it later on. You know, the little description it gives it's probably the best graphics pack for beginners, neither stylized nor ornate, with a sprite for everything. So it's pretty enjoyable. If you're one of those super hardcore turbo nerds, you might want to go back to the original ASCII graphics, but again, I ain't about that life. And if you see down here, there's some more display options, such as liquid depth and varied ground. Now, liquid depth for beginners or intermediate players as well, I like it turned on pretty much. Any water that appears in the game, this will put a number in the tile that the water appears through 1 through 7, describing the depth of the water there, which is very helpful. Some people might like it off for more of a challenge, but for now, I'd go ahead and leave it on. In the varied ground option, this is kind of, I'm not entirely sure to be honest, but I'm pretty sure this refers to different elevations of ground, and it puts the numbers on those as well sometimes if you're looking at like regional maps in world creation. On to our next tab, Utilities. Now these are some of the peripheral programs that I was discussing a little bit earlier. You have things such as Armok Vision, Dwarf Fortress Story Maker, and so on and so forth. The program I really would like to discuss before we begin is Dwarf Therapist. This is a must-have for everybody playing this game. It's going to make your experience a whole lot easier. The little description, as it reads, makes managing your dwarves' jobs and psychology easy, which is very true. In-game, you can assign your dwarves jobs based off the skills that they have, or you can just tell them to do a job they're not very skilled at, but the higher their skill, the better at their job they'll be respectively. And I already have this program opened up. It's a good idea to open it up before you even get in the game, but it doesn't really matter. But we'll take a look at it really quick before we go any further. This will be the screen that you see at first. It's blank right now, obviously, and if you don't have a game already open, you'll get a little pop-up window that'll say, oh, there was nothing for the Dwarf Therapist to connect to, and just click OK. Once you're in-game, this option at the top left of the screen, Connect to Dwarf Fortress, will load in your respective fortress and all the dwarves that you have so far, and you can assign them jobs and skills, which we'll be seeing here in a little while. As for right now, you can just go ahead and mini it, and we'll go through how to use this little program in just a little bit. So now, we also have our Advanced Options tab, and this is where you can alter things such as FPS count, whether you want the sound on and off, intro to the intro movie on. You don't have to have that on, but I kind of like watching it. You know, don't judge me, but I'm a turbo nerd, so it's pretty fun. And you can also, down here, change save options. I like to keep autosave on seasonal, so every time it's a new season, which is a month in the game, it'll save automatically, which I find useful in case I forget, you know. Initial save refers to when you first start your game. Do you want it to create a save file? I'll leave that off just because I don't know if I want to save that world or not. Do you want the game to pause on the save? I keep that on yes. You can pause your game or keep it in real time. Sometimes you need to pause it to keep up with things, other times it won't really matter. So when the game saves, let's say seasonally, when that happens, it will pause the game for you to catch up and kind of realize what's happening, which is I like. Pause on load refers to whenever you load a game, it will start out paused instead of just playing. Backup saves I keep turned off, and compressed saves, yes. Now, Dwarf Fortress hack we're not really going to worry about, so without any further ado, let us start playing Dwarf Fortress. Oh, and before I forget and we go any further, pro tip number 1. Always keep a tab of the website Dwarf Fortress Wiki open. This is a very helpful website. If anything you encounter in the game or you don't know how to do, you can come to this website, look it up, and it'll tell you exactly what it is, what it does, or how to do it. I'm not by any means claiming to be an expert at this game whatsoever. I've been playing for a little over a year, and I still use this website almost every single time I play, just because the game is so massive and it's just a lot to keep up with. So, good idea to have that open in case you run across something you're not familiar with. You can come and research it here. So, back to our game, and let us start playing. And of course you know I'm going to make you watch the opening video, because I like it so much. Damn friggin' dwarfs, yo. He done dug too deep, bro. He dug too deep. Anyways, so, your screen might look a little bit different than mine. Let's go ahead and full screen this. Our options on the startup page, it gives a little bit of an intro, you know, slaves to Armok, the god of blood, which is, you know, the dwarven god of blood. Chapter 2, Dwarf Fortress, histories of cupidity and exertion. This is like a fun little thing that'll change every other time, you know, you start the game. It'll say something a little bit different. Now, your screen, if you're a brand new player, probably won't have the top 2 options here, continue playing and start playing. It'll just start at create world and go down. And if we take a look here at the bottom, it gives some general info on the controls. Press enter to select an option. Press escape at any time for options. Blah, 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 blah. Now, you're more than welcome to use your mouse, but most controls in this game either require you to use the keyboard or are easier to use the keyboard. So go ahead and become familiar with just using the arrow keys and hitting enter a lot, because that's what's going to happen. So, let's go down to create new world. It's going to load up some creatures and object files for us. Enjoy the dwarf serenading you on his guitar while we wait. Welcome to the alpha of Dwarf Fortress. Just hit escape to continue. It's kind of like a little disclaimer here saying that if there's bugs, don't get full mad about it. So now, this is the first screen you'll see when creating a new world. We have different options to change here, such as world size, history, number of civilizations. We're going to go through each of these. Now, of course, it'll give a description of what each of these are. Down here at the bottom, world size is exactly how it sounds, refers to how large your world is going to be. You're more than welcome to create a larger world, but I generally like to keep it at either small or smaller. I don't really use pocket because that's too small. but just keep in mind that a larger world will take a long time to load, especially if you're on a laptop or something like I'm using right now. Sometimes it's worth it in the end just because you want a massive world with a lot of civilizations and stuff in it. That's cool, you know, but small is pretty decent sized, as you'll see, so let's just stick with that for now. So choose whatever world size you like, then go down the list. Next we have history, and this is the length of the pre-generated history of your world that you create. Each of these options, very short, short, medium, long, and very long, have their own respective years associated with it. As you can see, medium would be 250 years of pre-generated history in-game. Short, 125. Very short's 5, so that's like pretty much the world isn't very old at all. Long, 550, and very long, 1050. And history refers to like what civilizations will grow, what happens to the mega beasts, you know, where things will be at, the number of sites in the world and stuff. I usually keep this also at short or medium because, of course, just like with world size, if you have it longer or large for world size, the world's going to take a little bit longer to generate. So let's do short for our sake. Number of civilizations. This controls how many distinct races and cultures there are. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the only actual civilizations, like races that can create and form civilizations, are the dwarves, elves, humans, and goblins. Now, there are a plethora of other creatures, monsters, and mega beasts in the world, but the only ones that'll form civilizations like dwarves are the ones I already described. So go ahead and alter this to whatever you would like. If you would like a large number of civilizations, then all across the map will be cities and towns. If you like low, then there's only a select few. Let's keep it at medium for now, just because why the heck not? Maximum number of sites. This is how many distinct places can exist after world generation. You can, of course, change this from very low to very high. Now, this refers to, like, you know, little towns or cities or things like that. Abandoned towns or landmarks and stuff. We'll keep that at medium as well. Number of beasts. Now, increasing this setting makes large beasts more prevalent. Now, you have normal crazy beasts that'll, you know, kill your dwarves, like crazy stuff like, you know, giant hamsters that'll eat your dwarves and stuff. But, I'm not sure entirely if this option is referring to those types of beasts or mega beasts. Now, mega beasts, there's a select number generated in every new world, and they're like gigantic monsters, like the Balrog from friggin' Lord of the Rings, so why not? Let's change. I'm pretty sure this is referring to the beasts I was talking about, though. We'll go ahead and change this to high to keep things more interesting. Now, if you want a not-so-dangerous world to start out in, go ahead and change that to very low, but natural savagery. Increasing savagery makes the world more difficult to settle, so this can affect everything from, you know, plant life to how many crazy monsters and animals are around you that'll hurt your dwarves. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on high too, because I like a little more of a challenge. If you're new, go ahead and start out at low, but I really don't think it'll affect you very much very early on in the game. Now, mineral occurrence. This is a very important option. Increasing mineral occurrence makes more embark sites have minerals. So, just as it sounds, you can either have a lot of minerals in the game or not a lot of minerals in the game, and if you don't have a lot, it's going to be hard to make anything. So, I like to turn this option to frequent. If you want more of a challenge, go rare, but it's really going to affect your gameplay experience, so I wouldn't go as far as doing everywhere, because then it might be too easy, but frequent's pretty good. So, let's go ahead and hit Y on our screen to go on to the next screen. Now this is a map over here of the world that's being generated, and over here to the left it'll kind of tell you what it's going through right now. It'll prepare like the actual continents and stuff itself, and then it'll tell you what age it's in, the year it's going through, history figures, number of dead people, events that have happened. Now at first this map might seem a little bit confusing, but it's pretty straightforward the more you start to look at it and analyze it. And at the bottom of our screen, we can see the options enter or escape to pause or finish. Now, back when we chose our history and how large our world was, is how many years our map will generate before it stops. I chose, I believe, short or something, which is 125 years, so it stopped automatically. Now, the world is Zuza blah 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 something in Dwarvish, which means the domain of destiny. And this is a really cool part of the game. There's actually like Dwarven language, and it'll tell you the translations and stuff. Now, if we look over here on a map, I'm going to go through some of the things we'll be seeing. Obviously, blue is water. These gray triangle-looking things are mountain ranges. Starting to look a little more obvious, right? These purple areas are dangerous, haunted areas, or, you know, evil zones, you can think of them. These kind of green squiggle-looking areas are either, you know, grass plains or swamps. And yellow is usually a desert of some sort. Now, if we look at these symbol-like things here, these are Dwarven Fortresses, other Dwarven Fortresses in the game. As you can see, they're kind of scattered around. There's one down here. There's like some right here and right here in the middle of the map at this mountain range. You'll also find like elven fortresses and human settlements and stuff like that sometimes. But and these blue lines on the continents are rivers. And if you see, my cursor is actually located down here, this yellow flashing square, and this is where the movement keys come in. And you can see down here, movement keys to view. So let's go around and look at some of these. And at the top it'll tell you what it is. The continents of chopping. This is the warm plain, so it's some sort of grass plain all through this region. And if you go over these mountains, the Spike of Thunder. These are some mountains here, and we can look over here. This is the Dark Goblin Pits of whatever that word is. I'm not going to try to pronounce. So, you know, the surrounding area is kind of haunted, or just dangerous. There's several goblin pits here. And let's go over a fortress really quick. The Dwarven Fortress of Astukmakfall, or the Wall of Labor. Pretty cool names. You'll get some silly ones and crazy sounding ones too, but the game randomly generates some of these, or you can put in your own. Whatever boat you float. And at the top you can see we have like Arctic zones here. This is pure ice. And this area, like the black and blue, is tundra. So it won't just be pure ice cubes everywhere. We ice cubes. Nah, it's tundra. So at least you'll have like permafrost soil and stuff. But so let's go back down at the bottom left of our screen, and you can hit A to abort at any time if you don't like this world, and it'll generate a new one. You can export the image or info if you would like to, or hit enter to accept. We're going to hit enter and accept the world that has been generated. Now, like I said before, it might take a few minutes to load up because I'm on a laptop, a little bit longer or shorter depending on how good your computer is. It's usually not that long at all though. So now, it'll take us back to our main home screen of the game. We created our world, so now we want to go to the Start Playing option, which will allow us to choose the world we want to play in. So, Start Playing. And the world we just created, it's good to, you know, remember what it was. It was Zuza, whatever the heck that is. So, select the world you want to play in. Now, there's 3 game types. There's Dwarf Fortress, Adventurer, and Legends. Dwarf Fortress is the one we're going to be talking about specifically, and this is where you create a fort, manage a whole bunch of dwarves, build things of that nature. Adventurer is you control a single character and can go around and adventure and level up and get equipment and stuff, both of which are pretty fun, but we're going to go with Dwarf Fortress today. Some more loading. Now, if you look at the top left of the screen, that blue X is what day of the month that it will stop on. And I guess I could have stopped it to let you take a better look at that screen, but those were the months of the year, January through December, and the dwarves, of course, give them the names of stones. And it usually starts about 2 weeks into January is when you embark on your journey. That way you have time to go through spring, build up some resources and find lodgings, and then by the time winter happens, you've got some good supplies. So now, this screen, you have 3 different maps. The far left one is a local map, the middle one is regional, and the right one is world. Now, the world map shows the entire world over on the right. Now, where I have a small world, the regional map shows pretty much the entire world that's available. And if you had a larger, like if you created a large world, the regional map would probably, be a little more useful and not as similar to the world map. And then, of course, your local map. If we look at the regional map, my yellow cursor that's flashing there in the center, each of those is their own local region. So right now I'm on that one tiny little mountain, and if we look at the local map, that's what it looks like. There's mountains in this region, this is a river, and this is either forest or plains, which we can look at here shortly. If we take a look to the right of the screen, it will give us some general information on the region, our yellow cursor, that we're currently on. It tells what the general, terrain is like. It's a mountain. It tells temperature, how many trees there are, other vegetation, surroundings, tells whether or not if there's a river or a lake or a brook, and some other details about the soil. Specifically this one, so it's a mountainous region. The temperature is temperate, so settling wouldn't be that difficult. Now in extreme temperatures, you're going to have to worry about clothing and getting inside quicker. There are no trees, which would be a pretty big hassle. We're going to find a region with trees, that way we have plenty of lumber to create things out of. You want other vegetation for, food and such like that, harvesting berries. The surroundings is wilderness, so that means there could be dangerous beasts and stuff around. There is a brook, as we can see over here on the local map. And we have sand, shallow metal, deep metals, and a flux stone layer, all of which are really good to have. You could argue about the sand, but it's useful in its own way, and it's also pretty good to have clay if you can get it. So everything's pretty cool about this region, other than the fact that there are 0 trees. So, let's look around. I like to usually start kind of close to an enemy civilization. That way, several years after you've got a foothold, you'll start to get invaded, which is a fun part of the game. Let's see. Now you can actually search around the entire map with the cursors to find a place you like, or if you look down at the bottom left of the screen, some of the options you have, the keys U, M, K, and H move your local area. So if we look at our local map, you can actually move it around, and that'll be the exact area you start on, specifically on that region. You can resize your local area by making it bigger or smaller. You can also change modes with tab. Now if we take a look at the top right of the screen, this is some other information that's important when choosing an area. So we have the general characteristics of the region up here at the top right. If we hit tab, you can see what neighbors are near you. So there's other dwarves around us where we're currently located, our yellow cursor here, goblins, and humans. To keep it fun, you want to make sure some of your neighbors are bad. That way you'll actually get attacked. If not, it might take years and years for you to even be attacked by anybody. We also have your civilization. Now there's 2 different civilizations you can choose for dwarves in this world in particular. So if you look down here, you use plus and minus to go between this instead of your arrow keys. If you're hitting your arrow keys, you're just going to be changing your location on the map. Plus and minus on your numpad will alter which civilizations that you would like to be a part of. Now, if we look over here at the world map, it'll highlight specifically the dwarven civilizations that it's referring to. We have the natural rags, which is right here in the center mountain range. Or you could be part of the Fence of Kindling, which is a larger dwarven civilization, which looks like it's pretty much taking up most of the east coast of this world. Now, it's probably helpful to be part of a larger civilization, but it's not too important. Every now and then you'll get envoys from your civilization, and they'll trade with you. But other races and things will trade with you as well, like the elves and the humans. If you have a smaller civilization, if it dies out, you know, that can affect things later on. We're not going to go into too much detail about that right now. So go ahead and choose whatever civilization you want to be a part of. I'll be part of the bigger one, the Fence of Kindling. Let's hit tab again. Another one is relative elevation. It gives you like a meter. Gray is really high. This darker blue color is really low, and you can look over here and see how that's related respectively. If we hit tab again, we also have numbers. 0 through large asterisk. This tells you how, you know, it's kind of like a topographic map of the area you've chosen. If you look over at your local map, it'll have the respective numbers and such and tell you whether there's hills or mountains or if it's all flat. Let's hit tab again, and it brings us back to our standard information of the area we're going to choose. Now, if it's taking forever to find an area you really like, you definitely want some soil, shallow metals, deep metals, and a flux-stone layer. Those are all very important for crafting and stuff. I guess you could argue they're not necessary because you could trade, but if you want a pretty easy time, you're going to want all of those. Clay and sand are nice to have, but they're not necessary in my opinion. So, if we look here at the bottom of the screen, you can hit F to find a desired location. So let's hit that really quick just because I don't want to look around a lot. It'll bring up another screen right here. Now, find desired location, and it gives some options to choose from, and it'll search the entire world map when you fill in these details for something that's specific to what you chose. Again, we're going to use the plus and minus on our numpad to go up and down these options. Oh, I lied. It's actually the arrow keys. My apologies. Arrow keys to go up and down through these options and decide what your area will be like. So you can change the savagery from... Alright, hold up a sec. My apologies. Oh, I started the search. Okay. So let's go up and down here. You use 4 and 6 on the numpad. I wasn't looking, I got ahead of myself. This is how you select the change for each of these, and up and down on the arrow keys to go up and down for these options. So, using 6, you can go through if you want low savagery, medium, high, or it's not applicable. Let's go ahead and say medium to make things a little more interesting. We'll go down to evil. We'll just leave that, we don't really care. Elevation, I don't really care about. Temperature, I don't care about. Rain, don't care about. Drainage, don't care about. Let's say we want a flux-stone layer. We already selected no aquifers before we even started our game, but let's go ahead and put no again. Rivers, yes, we want a river. We want shallow metal. We want deep metal. We want some soil. Let's do some soil, and we'll just leave that as we don't really care either. And then we hit enter to do our search for our location. Now this might take a few minutes, but if you don't look or feel like searching your entire map to find the location you want, this is a really helpful and viable option. So the red that's appearing on the map is all the locations that do not fit the criteria that I specified. Now, the flashing locations on our map that have appeared are the suitable locations that fit into the criteria that I specified. So let's hit escape to browse our results and get back to the original. So now we can move our cursor again. Let's see, let's choose... I'm just going through the flashing green squares at this point to choose one we like. Jeez, I'm trying to find one with a lot of trees. Here we go. We got very deep soil, but that doesn't really matter. It's just going to take a little bit longer to dig through. So we can see the temperature is temperate, the trees are woodland, so there's pretty good woods everywhere. There's moderate vegetation and the surroundings are still wilderness, and we have a stream. Let's go over to our local map and specify where we want to start out. We use UMKNH to do this. I'm gonna do something about right here. That way we have a stream, and or actually let's just go back to where it started us out originally. I lied. Let's do that. That looks good. So now, if we look again at our options at the bottom of the screen, we're going to hit E to embark. If we look at our local map, we have a stream available in our starting location. There's going to be trees. There's you know, it looks like a good start out area. So E to embark. It'll give you a warning. Are you sure you want to embark here? This is your only warning. So if you have any last minute, changes, go ahead and do them. You can hit escape to cancel and pick something else, but we're going to use this location. Now, the next screen of world creation will be to prepare for your journey. Now we have a couple options here. Some of these down at the bottom I would not fool with. You have play now, which will randomly assign your dwarves, skills and labors and things like that. But I personally like to do what's called prepare for the journey carefully. This is going to allow you to choose all the supplies that you bring with you. It'll also allow you to choose the skills and starting professions of the dwarves you start out with. It's going to take a little bit longer to do, but it's definitely worth it in the end, and I would highly recommend doing this. So, let's choose prepare for the journey carefully. Now, it gives us 7 dwarves to start out with. Each of them have the blue numbers, 10 skill points to assign, and over here to our right are all the skills that's available. There's some more. If you hit right on the arrow keys, I'm going to hit up to go to the very bottom of the list. So there's quite a bit of skills here, each of which affect different things. I'm going up and down, and we'll go all the way back to the top minor.